Okay. All right. Here we go. Good evening. Welcome into Sports Talk at the Stadium tonight from Death Valley at Clemson, where the Tigers are the state champions, snapping that 5-game losing streak to the Gamecocks, and they did it in resounding fashion, 35-17. Corn and K-Mac with you from the stadium this evening after watching the Tigers take apart the Gamecocks. K-Mac and Dabo Swinney said it correctly after the game. They deserved to win the game. They physically dominated South Carolina in every aspect of the game.
Yeah, I feel like I've watched this game before over the past 5 years. It's just the opposite happened. It was Clemson that dominated on defense, Clemson that took advantage of mistakes on offense and didn't make any mistakes, any devastating mistakes. They were the better team. I mean, the better team, as simple as it is, as much analysis as we do, usually the better team wins. Clemson was definitely the better team. No one can walk out of this stadium and say, oh, Clemson stole one, the Gamecocks should have won. The better team won the game.
Well, we've seen Deshaun Watson this season, and at times he's taken our breath away. Not quite like he did today. He played the entire game, we found out afterwards from Dabo Swinney, with a torn ACL. It didn't happen in the Georgia Tech game. That was just the sprain and the bruise on the knee. But the next week in practice for the Georgia State game, remember on that Thursday when words came out that he had tweaked the knee, well, Dabo said afterwards it was actually a torn ACL. He talked it over with the medical staff. Of course, he was thoroughly examined. Everybody determined that he couldn't hurt the knee any further by playing against South Carolina, K-Mac. So they put him in a specially designed brace and turned him loose against South Carolina. Now, they did certainly take some things out of the game plan. You didn't see him running wild out there. Really just only one run that he broke a couple of tackles and nearly scored, about a 9 or 10-yard run. For the most part, they wanted him to stay in the pocket and throw the ball. And with the time he had to throw the ball, South Carolina never got a hand on him.
No, and he didn't have to make a lot of long passes. The Gamecocks didn't have any pass rush, which they haven't had all season. So it was a really good team for him to play if you're going to play on one leg with a torn ACL, which is mind-boggling to me that he did that. And, I'm not a doctor. They put him out there. They had a brace on it. That seems risky. I mean, that anybody would say that seems risky, but they know more about it than me. I'm sure they wouldn't have put him out there if there was a chance it could have been worse. And he'll have surgery at the end of the year, which is another. I mean, is it worth it to play him in the Champ Sports Bowl? I don't know. That's a decision for the coaching staff. But amazing. I mean, that's a legacy type performance when people look back on it and say, yeah, Deshaun Watson went out there with a torn ACL and beat South Carolina.
Yeah, I think Tiger fans would say here in Death Valley today that he did number 4 proud the way he played out there today, considering that number 4 was Steve Fuller back in the 70s and the things he did here in this stadium. Watson was tremendous. The offensive line was very good. Wayne Gallman, nearly 200 yards rushing. We can't forget to talk about Clemson's defense. Number 1 statistically in the country coming in. I think they lived up to that. They gave up some yards to South Carolina because South Carolina's offense is typically pretty good. But for the most part, outside of the touchdown the Gamecocks scored in the first quarter, they kept them out of the end zone into the fourth quarter, which allowed the offense to build its lead. They pressured Dylan Thompson all day, sacked him, knocked him down, and forced many bad throws.
They were the story of the game. The Gamecocks had 2 yards to score a touchdown there late in the third quarter, which could have got them back in the game. They needed a half a yard on fourth down on the Tigers' 30-yard line in the fourth quarter. Both stops by Clemson. This game could have been a lot closer had those gone the other way. Had the Gamecocks just gotten field goals at that point, they could have made it a one-possession game. So that was very impressive what Clemson did defensively there. People talk about who they played. They are a legitimate defense. That's front 7. That's all seniors. They've been around, and half of those guys will be in the NFL this time next year.
Yeah. And see, if you're South Carolina, you can only hope that your young guys on defense kind of grow up to be like Clemson's defense of this year. And Dabo Swinney will tell you that, 3 years ago, his defense was kind of struggling out there because they were playing a bunch of young guys, which leads me to my next point, and that is the future of these programs now here at the end of the regular season. Of course, both are going bowling. Clemson will be going for a 10th win. South Carolina will be going for a winning season, which is nowhere near what was expected of the Gamecocks. Let's talk about them for a moment. I think that the expectations that were raised by the coaches in the spring and the offseason and talking about this team were very misguided as things turned out.
Yeah, and it starts on the defensive side of the ball. Lorenzo Ward said on Sports Talk that they had a chance to be better on defense this year than they were last year. That was a huge miscalculation. They can't blame injuries or, they had some attrition, so they could have taken a step back and nobody would have been upset with them. But inexcusable, in my opinion, how the the defensive staff handled them. You want to go to Ward? You want to go to somebody else? I don't know. But Steve Spurrier is going to have to take a long, hard look at that and say, what happened here? He's only got so many years left. Does he want to roll the dice with that same group again? I don't think so. I think they're going to have to make changes on the defensive side of the ball. I don't know what those are. I'm not inside and privy enough to know, but anybody knows they have to make some changes on the defensive side of the ball if you're South Carolina, coaching staff-wise.
If you're a Gamecock fan, you have to be worried that your program is taking a step backwards because of this loss here. You've lost the handle on Clemson now. You're going to have a new quarterback next year. You're going to lose some other key players off your offense. You're losing a few guys off the defense, but basically 9 starters return on the defense. That can be a good thing or a bad thing. You have to hope for them it's a good thing, and that with a year of maturity, they'll be even better next year. But the key for them in the offseason now is developing a winning quarterback, and they're going to have to find it, whether it's Connor Mitch or somebody else. You could see it today. One of the big differences is Dylan Thompson, of course, set the single-season passing record, but he could not escape the pressure. Even when he had a chance to run, he looked unsure of himself. He couldn't decide whether to run or throw, and I don't like to compare him to previous quarterbacks, but you look at a Connor Shaw, for example, in those scenarios of the past, Connor Shaw would take off and would make a play. That's not Dylan Thompson's game. I think South Carolina, like so many offenses around the country, they're going to have to go back to a quarterback who can throw, but who can also run.
You got to have a little mobility, and his big mistake was not throwing the ball away on that play where Beasley sacked him and stripped the ball. Clemson got it and scored 3 plays later, and that was really the turning point in the game. That's what got it all flipped around, outside of the fact that the defense, knowing that they were going to face a quarterback that wasn't 100%, I think you probably should have had a better game plan, try to put a little more pressure. They weren't going to be able to pass the ball. He wasn't going to be able to run a lot. So make him beat you with his legs, come up with something better. I think the lack of adjustments on the defensive side of the ball, too. 2 of those jet sweep plays are not really jet sweeps because they're just flips.
Yeah.
Clemson ran that against Wake Forest. It's not like you haven't seen it before. They do that, and it kind of brings you back to the Kentucky game when South Carolina couldn't stop the Wildcat play, and you saw Clemson run that some. And give them credit, they did stop the Wildcat for the most part. But yeah, it's definitely soul searching. Steve Spurrier said it. They're probably a 6-6 team. They look like a mediocre football team. And I heard a Clemson fan as I was walking down to the post game say, "It's right again." South Carolina's mediocre where that's where they've been for 100 years. We got it again. And that's really kind of how everybody feels around here now. And it doesn't erase what the Gamecocks have done for 5 years, but it should be a splash of cold water of, hey, these guys up here are doing something different now. We better get it back.
Yeah, that's the point of my point earlier. Is this a turning point for South Carolina, or is this just a minor hiccup in the program? Has Steve Spurrier actually built a program, or has it been a year-by-year thing? Dabo Swinney certainly believes he has built a program. In his post-game remarks, looking to the future, he couldn't be more ecstatic. He feels like he has got great players coming in. Yeah, believe it or not.
Every year, though, right?
He feels like he's got great players coming in, and that with the players coming back and the players coming in, as he put it, this program is built for the long-term success, not anything short-term, long-term success. And that's what he thinks he has here at Clemson. And why shouldn't he feel that way? He's going to have arguably the best quarterback in the ACC next year. That's presuming Jameis Winston departs. Mm-hmm. You got to put Deshaun Watson right up there. A healthy Deshaun Watson can do so many things. Artavis Scott is back. Many of the offensive weapons are back. They lose some good players on defense, but a lot of young players will be juniors, seniors next year who have played, and they're going to get Travis Blanks back off his redshirt year. So they stand to be very strong on defense as well. Future looks very bright for Clemson moving forward. South Carolina, big question mark as they get ready for their bowl assignment, which we'll find out in a couple of weekends. So to sum it all up, Clemson had the better record coming in. They appeared to be better on paper, K-Mac, and they went out on the field today and they proved it.
Yeah, it doesn't take long. Year to year, things can change. Week to week in college football, things can change. What's going to happen with Chad Morris and SMU? That looks like it's moving in that direction. You hear Brent Venable's name mentioned. I think he'll be back. You lose a lot of guys. It only takes a few guys to turn a program around. This time last year, Clemson fans were kicking rocks, wondering if they were ever going to beat South Carolina again. And Gamecock fans were riding high, thinking, they were going to win the SEC anytime now. And 12 months later, here we are. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens here over the next few weeks into the bowl season and then into the off season.
Yeah. Well, Black Monday for college football coaches is coming up. We'll see what happens around USC and Clemson as far as the Morris situation is concerned. All right. Now here on sportstalksc.com, we've got complete coverage, post-game coverage for you of the locker rooms from Clemson and USC. There are no teleconferences tomorrow. Both coaches are taking the day off. We'll look forward to talking with you on Monday night and getting your thoughts on how things played out here tonight in Death Valley. Final thoughts from you, K-Mac?
Well, another great season. It flies, you blink, and it's all over. Looking forward to the bowl games, seeing where everybody goes. And even though the teams weren't top 10 teams, never short on drama when these two teams get together. The Palmetto Bowl, a lot of fun.
Absolutely. They've handed out the trophy that they've been using for these past 20-something years. For the last time, they'll have something new to hand out next year in Columbia. That'll do it for our coverage. Clemson wins the Palmetto Bowl this year, 35-17, before more than 82,000 fans here in Death Valley. Thank you for joining us here on Sports Talk at the Station, Sports Talk at the Stadium from Death Valley.